LSU's got to get up there quickly, be ready to snap. Into the end zone. Touchdown! The Tigers roar!
DJ Chark may have just saved LSU's season and Les Miles' job.
The offense did not get the snap off.
We have had a cataclysmic reversal for LSU. Auburn are the victors.
Have you ever seen such a swing of emotions?
It's been a rough weekend for LSU football, to say the least. First, they lose a heartbreaker to rival Auburn on Saturday. And on Sunday, Les Miles was fired after 12 seasons as head coach. LSU is expected to contend for a national championship this season. But a 2-2 start was enough to bring about the end of Miles. The Mad Hatter went 114-34 at LSU, the second most victories in school history. He coached the Tigers to a national title in 2007. Offensive coordinator Cam Cameron was also fired. Defensive line coach Ed Ogeron has been named interim head coach. We now welcome in ESPN's college football guru, Paul Finabaum. Paul, thank you so much for being with us.
My pleasure. Thank you so much, Molly.
Paul, why this move at this time for LSU?
I think it became inevitable that he wasn't going to make it, and there's almost a new axiom in college football, and really in a lot of sports for that matter. If it becomes inevitable, why not do it immediately? It seems cruel, it seems harsh, but this school did not want Les Miles to return in 2016 anyway. Remember last year, they pretty much fired Les Miles. They offered the job behind his back to Jimbo Fisher. It went back and forth for a couple of days leading into the final regular season weekend, and at the last minute on Friday of Thanksgiving week, Fisher pulled out. They were stuck with Les Miles. He won the game against Texas A&M, and the president, the AD, everyone did an about-face. They announced that he was coming back at that rather stilted news conference. And, you know, you would have expected Les Miles with a new lease on life to change things, but he retained Cam Cameron, who was the much maligned offensive coordinator. They did the same thing that they were doing last year that nearly got them both fired, and they got exposed against Wisconsin and then Saturday night against Auburn, one of the worst teams in the SEC West. Auburn did not even score a touchdown, 5 field goals, and then you saw the clock management disaster at the end. The school said, why wait? Let's dump him, be done with it, and start looking for a new coach.
Paul, great to have you on the show.
Thanks, Steve.
How do you explain the hard-headedness of Les Miles? Because everybody's been talking for at least the last couple of years, if not longer, about his unwillingness to change, particularly when you consider the willingness of Nick Saban to adapt, along with other coaches. How do you explain how thick-headed this guy appeared to be, knowing that there were people calling for his job?
Stephen, you can't. Not to quote Einstein this early in the morning, but we've all heard it. If you keep doing the same thing, you'll get the same results. That's the definition of insanity. And I'm not saying Les Miles is insane. He was just too stubborn. And I think he thought that Leonard Fournette was going to get him over the hump. But Fournette got banged up against Wisconsin. He was a shell of his former self, even though he got 100 yards or a little bit more against Auburn. And I just don't understand it. And I think last year he so resented the administration trying to fire him that he said, you know what, I'll show you. I'll keep Cameron and do it my way. And we all know it didn't work. And there were a couple other aspects of this. You know, he lost to Nick Saban every year since 2011. Go back to 2011 for a second, guys. Les Miles was undefeated. He won the SEC championship. He beat Nick Saban at his own place in a 1-versus-2 late-season showdown. And what happened? He had to play Saban again in the national championship game, shut out 21-0, and it hasn't been the same since.
So how much of it is stubbornness as it relates to Cameron, Paul, who, I mean, if you're going to blame a team for lack of offensive imagination when you got a running back like that, maybe you get rid of the offensive coordinator first, then see how the head coach does. And how much of it is, as you're alluding to, simply the fact that he's not Nick Saban? I mean, he has won a championship. He's won a whole, like 3-4 times more games than he's lost. How much of this is simply that he's not Nick Saban?
Max, that's exactly it. And for those who don't remember, Nick Saban was at LSU. He won a national championship in 2003. Les came in, replaced Saban when Saban went to the Dolphins. A couple years later, he won the national championship. And what did everyone say down in Louisiana? He won with Saban's players, even though it wasn't completely accurate. Les was a great recruiter. He just never could develop a quarterback. And ultimately, it got him. But back to your question about Nick Saban, that's what everyone is going to say in the SEC and around college football. If you're not Nick Saban, you're probably not going to survive, at least in this conference, because Nick Saban has ruled it. We all know 4 out of the last 7 national championships, and clearly #1 this year.
Paul, obviously, I'm no college football aficionado like yourself, but I hear things that I hear. And let me tell you what I hear and throw it your way. Even though Orgeron is the interim coach, and obviously he has an LSU pedigree, and we know what he did at USC, we know all of that, you're also hearing the name Lane Kiffin, because that's somebody they could potentially be interested in succeeding Les Miles at LSU next year and beyond, which plays in part to some degree as to why Steve Sarkisian is now at Alabama, because even though he's just doing broadcast work, he could end up succeeding Lane Kiffin as the offensive coordinator in Alabama once Kiffin leaves for LSU. What can you tell us as to whether or not there's any truth to that whatsoever?
I think Kiffin is someone to watch. It's interesting that Orgeron was on his staff, and I can see a scenario that they bring Kiffin in. Orgeron stays, does the recruiting. He's a great recruiter. He's just not much of a head coach. He bombed out at Ole Miss about 15 years ago. Yeah, I think it's possible, and it's the LSU way. What do you accomplish? You get an offensive mind, someone who has led Alabama back to prominence, and I say that tongue-in-cheek because Alabama slipped for 2 years and didn't win the national championship, and that's not being prominent in that program. And you also get under Nick Saban's skin, and I think it would. So I think that's something at work here. I don't think Kiffin would be the first choice. I really think they'll go back to Jimbo Fisher again or Tom Herman. I know that sounds like you're just looking at the yellow pages for 2 hot coaches, but I think LSU has the pedigree. They have the money, even though they're going to pay less in his staff, between $8 and $12 million, depending on which lawyer you believe. But I think they'll shoot high if they don't get Jimbo or Tom Herman. I think Lane Kiffin could be in play.
Paul, if SC had to do it again, you figure they might want to keep Orgeron, who was doing a very good job before they brought in Sarkisian, and you saw how that wound up. Is there any chance Orgeron could keep this job? Is there any chance?
I know. I'll never forget being out there. I saw you that weekend when we were out for game day, and Orgeron beat Stanford, and a lot of people thought in November of 13 that he was going to keep his job. And he probably should have. But I don't think he will unless this happens. What if somehow LSU runs the table, beats Saban in Tiger Stadium on the first Saturday in November, and then there's such a coalescing of fan support, player support, that the administration has no choice? I think it's extremely unlikely. I've seen this team play a couple of times. I don't think they are that good, and I think Fournette being banged up. But by getting rid of Les now, they've given the team maybe a little bit of energy and can steal a couple of wins. But I think that is highly unlikely.
Paul Finabaum, I need to switch subjects from LSU to Notre Dame, because Saturday I watched the Duke Blue Devils, not the basketball Duke team, the football Duke team, beat Notre Dame. And I saw you on SportsCenter yesterday talking about Brian Kelly, who went on a post-game conference, talked about how nobody is safe, everybody's up for grabs. Now we've learned that he's fired as offensive coordinator. Could you talk to me about, or remind my audience about your thoughts about Brian Kelly and Notre Dame? What the hell is going on in South Bend? Well,
first of all, this is a Duke team that lost to Northwestern and Wake Forest, two football powers, as we all know. You know, for those who didn't hear it, Brian Kelly, after an embarrassing loss for the second straight week at home, blamed his players. He said everyone's on notice. No one's job is safe. He didn't say anything about Brian Van Gorder, who's making over $1.5 million a year and has been a total joke of a defensive coordinator. So what did he do later in the afternoon? He did what all cowardly head coaches do. They fire the coordinator, as if that's going to matter, Stephen A. Think about Brian Kelly's record. After he got destroyed by Alabama a couple of years ago in the national championship game, something like 42-14, he had a 9-4 and an 8-5 season. Last year it got better, but he got just beaten to death in the final game, the bowl game against Ohio State. And this year he's already out of it. I think Brian Kelly's the guy who they better watch out for his own job, because I do not like, and I can't imagine anyone like, criticizing your players as if it's their fault when you're the guy making $5 million a year.
This is a man who does not mince words,
That's
Paul
right.
Finabaum.
That's right. By the way, I meant the defensive coordinator said office coach, so I appreciate the correction. Thank you so
Yes,
much.
we got it. Paul, thank you so much. Tremendous insight. We really appreciate you making time this morning.
No, the pleasure was mine. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. We start First Take on this Monday with devastating news from this weekend in the world of sports. Marlins 24-year-old superstar pitcher Jose Fernandez was killed in a tragic boating accident late Saturday night, and one of the greatest golfers of all time and the game's most beloved figure, Arnold Palmer, passed away on Sunday at the age of 87. Gentlemen, this was such heartbreaking news yesterday as these stories unfolded.
Well, in the case of Arnold Palmer, 87 years of age, an iconic figure in the world of golf, in the world of sports, period. Our heartfelt condolences obviously go out to his loved ones, his family. 87 years old, lived a wonderful life, gave us a lot of great moments. We appreciate all that he has done. In the case of Fernandez, 24 years of age, 24 years.
It's not fair.
Whole future ahead of him. A star, superstar in this league. Obviously the face of the Miami Marlins franchise. Just watching Dan Le Batard on SportsCenter crying, just seeing so many of our baseball.
Eduardo Perez.
Eduardo Perez as well. What can you say? I mean, it's just devastating.
Arnold Palmer lived a full life, 87 years old, and you always have to be greedy with life. It's never enough, and it's very sad that he passed, and he was the coolest guy and one of the biggest stars and helped popularize golf, and you can read all about it today, obviously. As Stephen A. said, heartfelt condolences out to his family and fans. Jose Fernandez, you know, so much has been said about the kind of person he was, which is, it's a testament to the kind of person he was, that so much has been said about that the kind of player he was has almost been lost in it all. And I watched also Dan Le Batard was a teary kind of tribute to him in a beautiful column that Dan Le Batard wrote about him and what he represented to Cuban Americans. But there's this relationship with baseball through numbers that helps people understand the game. I just want to say who Jose Fernandez through the numbers was as a baseball player. Because not since Thurman Munson's tragedy, and I was a little kid, a great Yankees catcher passed, he was already in decline, but still, when tributes come on TV to this day, I explain it to my daughters, that was Thurman Munson, what he meant to me and the Yankees and everything. Jose Fernandez had not yet entered his prime. If you have an ERA below 3, you're in Cy Young contention. His lifetime ERA, 2.5. If your walks and hits to innings pitched whip is below 1.1, Cy Young contention. His lifetime whip, 105. If you strike out a guy an inning as a starting pitcher, you might lead the league in strikeouts. He threw 471 major league innings, struck out 589 guys. Had he stayed healthy, that's a lot to say, but he'd have been in the Hall of Fame. This guy was an exceptional star talent. But it's a testament to the kind of person he was that no one's even talking about it today.
Yep, and Jose Day and how the community all galvanized towards him in a spirit. One thing I want to add with Eduardo Perez, with Hannah Storm, one thing that really stood out to me is how it took him 3 tries to get over to this country. And in the middle of the night, when he's on a boat coming from Cuba, someone had fallen off the boat. He dove in. It turned out to be his mother, but it was completely dark. He didn't even know it was her and was willing to risk his life. Talk about character. So all of us here on First Take want to send our prayers and condolences to the family of both Jose Fernandez and Arnold Palmer. Our hearts going out to you.